Shalom, friends. Welcome to The Genesis. My guest this week is Steve Marcus, a New York-based artist who's on our radar because he's currently on exhibit at the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education. His work is really visually striking, sometimes funny, always interesting, and a really profound engagement of Jewish ideas and identity with pop culture. His work is rooted in the kind of comic book counterculture work of artists like Robert Crumb and others who gained prominence in the 60s and 1970s, and he puts a uniquely Jewish twist on it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, as opposed to just listening on the podcast, you'll get to see some of his work that we show right up there on screen. We talk about kosher pop art, and we talk about Jewish futurity, and what it means to make Jewish art and culture relatable to people who maybe didn't grow up with it, but are open to it. He's deeply rooted in the Jewish tradition. He wants to make Jewish culture engaged and alive so that it has the ability to bring people together. But his connection to the Jewish ideas themselves come through in our conversation about Jewish learning. He does quite a bit of daily learning. We talk about Daf Yomi, which is daily Talmud study, and he has a really interesting take on some aspects of Talmud study that some people find off-putting, but he loves the minutia and the details, and he also likes the daily discipline. And so we talk about that a little bit, finding beauty in minutia. We discuss the process of teshuvah, of people who have not been connected to the Jewish tradition returning to it, and how his work is actually an expression of that process for him. If you have not seen his work down at the museum, I encourage you to do so. Another reminder that the Portland Jewish Film Festival is going on right now. Go to the website of the Oregon Jewish Museum, our partner in so much of our work, to see how you can view these films across the city or streaming through their website. Enjoy my conversation with Steve Marcus. Thanks so much for listening. Steve Marcus, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Really excited to have you here. You live like the umbilical cord, the umbilicus of like Jewish America on the Lower East Side, very close to where my great-grandfather, Judah Leib Rose, was a rabbi. And you may live on the very street where he lived. So I love that, just for starters. It makes me feel it's very Amish, feels very warm. I actually wanted to start by asking you about your Torah learning, because I know that you do, or you have done in the past, some regular Torah learning. So I wanted to know if you can, are you still engaged in study at the yeshiva? And if so, what are you learning right now that's grabbing your attention?
Yes. So I'm still learning, and it's something that I got introduced to about 16 and a half years ago, to be exact, and learn every day. And it's something I'm very passionate about. So regardless of whatever anybody's learning, it's like, I think using your brain and learning is important, obviously.
Right.
As far as someone's spiritual discipline. So like I've been involved in another cycle of Daf Yomi. And when people learn Gemara, the Talmud, it's obviously something that you're always kind of referring to, because all the different pieces of this incredible Judaic puzzle is like all kind of like interact with one another. So whether it's a pasuk from the Chumash, it relates to a halacha, it relates to the Mishnah, is further discussed in the Talmud. And so like you end up referring back and forth. So I'm very dedicated to daily Mishnah learning. Gemara.
So is that, for people who are listening who don't know, Daf Yomi basically means like a daily page, but there's like almost like a globalized.
It's a movement. It's a movement. I believe.
Yes. So in other words, people studying the Talmud page, the Daf today in Yerushalayim, who are on the Daf Yomi cycle, are people studying in New York or LA or Mexico City are studying the same Daf. So are you also doing Talmud study?
Correct. Yeah. So, and I would just like to say, as far as Daf Yomi, like you said, it means page of the day, I guess, is a good translation. And I always say the Daf part isn't as hard as the Yomi part, right? It's like the page isn't as hard as doing it every day. Being dedicated to the everyday, very
and that's so much of what Jewish religious life is all about, is precisely that. It's like
we can, any number of people can find beauty in this ritual or that ritual, but the commitment to the daily in and out when it's kind of lost its initial luster, that's where that's where the rubber meets the road. Can you share a teaching that's kind of grabbed you or resonated with you over the last, I don't know, day, week, month? What's been on your mind that you've been like, man, that's cool?
It's like, I also find the minutia of halacha end up at a yeshiva, and you start to think to yourself, like, what does all this stuff even matter? It's just so like, whatever. And eventually over time, just like Rabbi Kiva said about the drop of water wearing away a stone, that it's like, basically over time, it's like you rise in your level of understanding, right? And so all of a sudden, these very like, these minutiae, these details or whatever get very exciting in a way, because it's because all of a sudden you understand its application. Now, the fact of the matter is, everybody that participates, every Jew that participates in tefillah and davening and whatever, doing mitzvahs or whatever it is, right? They are going to be, meaning that they're going to be
fulfill their obligation
in the mitzvah or whatever it may be, without even really having the understanding. It's like, you don't have to understand, but I do think it's exciting to understand as much as each individual is capable of. So each according to their own level, of understanding.
That's a beautiful insight to offer, because very often somebody who's excited about Talmud study or Mishnah study, like, oh, I heard it's really cool, I want to dive in. Maybe you start with an interesting, like big idea, and then you're like a page into it and you're like, what are we talking about? Because you're very quickly in the minutia. And if you can open yourself to that, it's animating and beautiful and interesting. But if you're looking for always the explicit theological big idea, it can be frustrating.
And also the other thing is, I think it's important for people to understand the concept of, which I think applies to many things in life, but the concept of lishma, which basically means just for the sake of doing. To learn, right? A lot of times in secular university, public school, whatever, they say the reason you're going to need to know to do this is for XYZ. It's going to help you in your, career path or your future or whatever, right? When it comes to learning Jewish things, it's just do it for the sake of learning. That's it.
Yes, it's the idea that you would just learn something because it's good to connect to the text or to the idea or to expand yourself. That's DOA in our current contemporary culture. If you can't monetize it, if you can't tell somebody how it's going to increase their income, don't even bring it to the school. That's the current thinking. I'm going to share some of your work with people if I can figure out how to share the screen. But I guess you are somebody who saw a connection and then beautifully integrated through your work, a relationship between the American counterculture of the 1960s and 70s in particular, and Judaism. Those are not worlds that a lot of people see a connection between. So tell me, kind of walk us through, like, how did that come out for you? How did you bring those worlds together, and why did that seem like an obvious thing to you?
All right. First, I'd like to say this particular show, Psychedelicatessen, Powerful Dose artwork by me, Steve Marcus, is very 60s, 70s counterculture. I came up, in subcultures that in the 80s and 90s, right? So that's like in my generation of influence. But one of the things that I realized that happened from going to Israel is that there's all these Jewish people from all over the world, from the diaspora, and they lived wherever they lived, right? They lived in Poland or Russia or Yemen, Morocco, Argentina, Mexico, United States, Canada, France, England, India, Ethiopia, right?
Sure.
It's like Australia, huge list of all places, because we ended up all in every corner, every nook and cranny. So what ended up happening is, when Israel got founded and people started to do Aliyah to go to Israel, what did they do? They took all the recipes, let's say, right? The culinary landscape in Israel is an excellent illustration of what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Right. So the most amount of bread in the world, right? A selection of different kinds of breads in the whole world is actually in Israel, because everybody came from whatever country they came from. And they brought the 3 or 4 different kinds of bread that they all,
And so too with the culture that they brought with them. Yeah.
and by
Yep.
living in that other society, they became in some way like adopted pieces of it, right? And then adapted those recipes to make it kosher, as an example, or whatever it may be, right? So now you go to Israel or even in New York or Miami or whatever, they end up bringing all these different foods. So how does this relate to me and my artwork? Before I started to go to the yeshiva 16 and a half years ago, I was a total secular American guy who was raised Jewish, right? So why does that matter? It matters because during the time that I was raised in New York City, there was a lot of subcultures that were really like bubbling and growing and
Right.
very exciting and dynamic. And eventually, through globalization, all these different subcultures ultimately was one of the greatest exports, or American cultural
Right.
export to the world. So like I was involved in this punk rock and this hippie world and this hip hop world and this graffiti world and the
Right.
cannabis world and all these different types of subcultural kind of things, skateboarders, this or that, punk rockers and green mohawks and all that, right? So what ended up happening was when I ended up doing tshuva, which and like being returning to Judaism, that I ended up realizing that just like the people in Israel that lived in another country.
That's such a beautiful articulation of the concept of teshuva, because you're not erasing the person that was before. You're integrating it into this larger picture. Would you would you agree with that?
Well,
and B, hey, can I show some of the pictures while you're talking?
Sure. I would like to say, like related to what you were saying, I'll get back to the artwork a little bit, but I think it's oh, look at this. All right.
Yeah. Look at that. Sorry. Some people are going to be listening to this on podcasts and they're so jealous, because if you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see the work. I'll kind of scroll through it as you're talking.
Let's say somebody comes home and it's like they put down their keys right in their home. And then the next day they're ready to leave. And what happens? They can't find their keys, right? So were their keys lost? No, the keys weren't lost, right? Because they're in the house. They're just not in the proper place.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
And because it's not in its proper place, we call that lost in some way. But the fact of the matter is, the keys were always there and they never changed. And the relationship to the owner never changed. They're still your keys, even though they can't be found. So I think just like the keys belong to its owner, and it may be misplaced, right? The keys might be misplaced or the Jew might be misplaced, but they'll be found and put in their proper place. And in some way, that's the concept of tshuva, which
beautiful.
Is like, because it's like, it does mean answer, even though we always use the word repentance, right? And so why answer? Because somebody who has all these questions about life, what's the meaning of life? What's this? What's that? This, that, the other thing, whatever, right?
Yeah.
They eventually, hopefully they'll come to a place where they get to say, you know what? It's like, now I have the answer. And that's why it's Baal Tshuva, which means the master of the answer, right? I've asked the questions and for me personally, I'm not somebody that's doing kiruv or trying to get other people involved in Judaism necessarily. If someone approaches me about it, I'm excited about it, but it's not like I'm pushing people toward that. That's not my place. But for me personally, it's been very good and definitely polished the diamond, I guess you would say.
Beautiful. Let me ask you a question. In the picture we're looking at right now, which is koach la'am with a raised fist, which is based on the power to the people. So much of the countercultural work, sometimes explicitly, but certainly implicitly, is pushing against something, right? Power to the people was a slogan, as far as I understand it, that's like, fighting back against government oppression, corporate domination. And I'm just wondering, like in Judaism, in the Jewish tradition, the idea of being anti or pushing against something is maybe not as well embraced.
How does this rebellious culture fit in, let's say, Jewish culture?
That's
You're
exactly,
asking.
yeah.
So there was a time when I was growing up that it's like you were either mainstream or alternative, right? I remember when there was punk rock shows that had rappers there
Yeah.
as well, right? That it was like a mix of these things, because it's like it wasn't a mainstream thing. It was an alternative or a fringe type of part of the society, and everybody kind of got along with each other. What ended up happening now in globalization, each one of these things became a billion-dollar industry, right? These are massive industries, the hip hop industry, the graffiti industry, all these different, kind of movements became businesses, right? Basically, what it comes down to is, I think one thing I'm personally very interested in is relatability, right? When it comes to the artwork, the relatability of the art is very important. You and I were, had the privilege to be able to be raised in America during that time, where a lot of anti-Semitism was really kind of like hidden.
Yeah.
It wasn't out in the
It felt like
public
it was
space.
dormant. Yeah.
It felt like it was dormant. What happens when people go to a Jewish museum, as an example, and they have like the Holocaust stuff, they have the history of the local Jewish community, let's say, or of this Jewish community of that state, or whatever it may be, right? So why does that matter? When young people or old people, right, go to the institution, they're getting their tour with their classroom or their tour group or whatever it may be, or just by themselves. It looks like Jewishness, Judaism, the Jewish people are extinct like a dinosaur, right? It's like you have the tefillin, Sefer Torah, Kiddush cup, but this, that, all these things that people use, Jewish people use every week. They're put into a case, and they're shown as if, look what these people used to do, right? That it's part of like history, because many places around the world make it mandatory for junior high school and high school kids to go to Holocaust museums and Jewish museums and things of that nature. That when they go there, they're already kind of have that body language, like they're getting all like, whatever, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah.
And their guards up, right? The door shut. Yeah. It's like the curtains drawn. It's like, that's it. They don't want to be. But because of globalization, when it comes to whether it's like in this case with psychedelicatessen, with like this incredible psychedelic culture, or I did one with skateboards. I have one with punk rock that I'm going to be doing. So,
great.
All these different things or whatever, not to get into all these different ideas, but they're relatable to people. So
and they're guarded
instantly.
Down,
And what's important about that relatability, that the contemporary Jewish art also shows that the Jewish people have a future.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't just represent, a dark past.
Yeah.
Right? And things and pictures of the local Jewish community from 1950.
Yeah, because then
you feel like people are going to relate to you in a contemporary way.
So the globalization of these subcultures, but you're saying it actually presents an opportunity because it becomes a different lens through which people can understand culture
and relate to it, right? It makes like Jewish things relatable, which I think is important, right? Because within those images are Jewish themes, right? So it's like people are going to now have this conversation without realizing. And the fact of the matter is, in relationship to what you're saying, I would say, as being Jews, it's like we know everything's for the good, right? Gamzu latova, right? It's like it's all for everything's for the good. Even when it doesn't seem to be good, it's really just your ego, right?
Yeah, there's good within it. Yeah.
Because expectations, closest relative is disappointment, right? So it's like when things seem bad, it's like it's because the ego had an expectation, creates disappointment, and all these things kind of happen or whatever, and turns into a big balagan, right?
Really beautiful.
So, I had a very good career in popular culture. And when I became interested in starting to make Jewish art, there was really not a lot of exciting contemporary Jewish art that I was aware of. There was a few people that I noticed and this and that. But what I did find out is, and this is slightly controversial in some way, if you go up to the Schomburg Center of Black Culture up in Harlem, right? You know, there, what do you expect to see there as a visitor? You want to see that there's a Black artist with a Black voice discussing contemporary Black issues and a Black institution, right? Somehow, which this has been a problem amongst our Jewish people, our own people, right? It's important to understand if someone was to go to the Museum of Modern Art, they don't identify any of the artists through identity, right? They don't say this is someone who's Black, this one's a Jew,
Right.
this one's Muslim, this one's Latino,
Yeah.
this one's Asian, this one's whatever, this one's a man, this one's a woman, this one's, gay, this one's straight. Doesn't matter. The art speaks for itself, right? Somehow in the Jewish institutions, right, in the museum world, right, what we find, and unfortunately this relates back to my passion of Jewish learning, is that there's a lot of very talented artists who are Jews, that are Jewish, that had the most terrible, miserable Jewish education, right? Now, the fact of the matter is, it's good that they know they're Jewish. They're already kind of, they're already
I know
kind
exactly
of in
what
it.
you mean.
They're involved, right? They know who they are. But if you were to say to them something like, in a way related to political things, about if someone like hates somebody, right, and doesn't have any interaction with them in the world, with their, prejudice against somebody, whatever that may be, political, racial, religious, whatever kind of thing. And then someone was to say to them, how do you feel about this, in the sense like that it's like you have such a strong opinion with no experience, with no knowledge, called ignorance.
Yes.
That's an ignorant person, right? So why does that matter? Why does this relate to what we're saying? Is that the Jewish artists that don't have a Jewish education and are claiming that what makes their art Jewish is that they're Jewish.
Yes.
So, and with a lack of education. And if you were to say to them, well, you're an ignorant person, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you have the opportunity to learn, but you're ignorant about it. So why does that matter? Since October 7th, the Jewish art world has gotten a bit of a push, right? That people are excited about it, but it's also exciting. People are excited about it because they've also been excluded from some of these other venues. And so now they're like struggling to create this like thing about what is Jewish art, when the fact of the matter is it's like history from, articles that were written in Commentary magazine in the 1960s obviously have discussed this very issue, right? Some of the people that are now getting excited about it, which I think is great. And I think it's important to encourage people to do positive things with themselves and their contribution to the world, But I would say a lot of these people now are like learning Kabbalah, mystical things, this and that. And I think that's also a problem, right? Even though they're passionate about it. As a guy who loves hot rods and, custom choppers and stuff like that, I would say that's akin like to basically saying, I'm going to buy a car, right? And I'm going to paint it. I'm going to put flames on. I'm going to get nice, rims, and it's going to be awesome. I'll put in fuzzy dice, and I'm going to make the dice match, that they put in the stereo. I'm going to do all this stuff. But the fact is, it needs an engine.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's to do the whole dress up.
Yeah.
And get involved.
I understand.
In all that. It's like you need the nuts and bolts. Like in a way,
for
it's
you,
like
observance of and adherence to the tradition and mitzvah is really very central to you and your work and your worldview.
I would say this. I would say that, to me, being in New York, who grew up, as a teenager during the crack epidemic and everything in New York, right? People, are become like addicted and obsessed with their lifestyle. They can't get away from it. They can't even pull themselves out of it. So what's one thing that people are very addicted to? Consumerism.
Right.
It's not just drugs and
Yeah,
alcohol
sure.
and, or what
Yeah.
pornography or whatever it is. It's like all of it. It's like the consumerism and being involved and spending money and this or that. So I would say anybody that can't control themselves to refrain from spending money even one day a week. We're not talking about
Yeah.
fast from this for a whole month or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
We're not talking about 26 hours a day,
A week.
a week, 26 hours a week. And the reality is you probably sleep for 10 of them,
Right.
right? So
You
like,
can do it.
what are we really talking
Yeah.
about here?
Yeah.
And it's so, the fact that it's, people like have to go out, have to use their card, have to drive, have to do the ATM. So even if they're not Jewish and they care about saving the world or the planet or the environment or whatever, okay, one day a week, you
Right.
don't drive.
I do think, especially in that sense, Judaism is countercultural because it has a distanced relationship to the material and the ethical norms of the society. But the material has always been of great interest to me, and and Shabbat is a great expression of that. Can I ask you? I want to ask you about a particular piece. So for those who are listening and not watching, first of all, you should go to the Genesis podcast on YouTube. But if you can't do that, we're looking at a beautiful piece that's currently in the museum, and it says Terrapin Hora, and there is like a Hasidic Jew dancing with the terrapin. Is this a Grateful Dead reference?
Of course.
Okay, just tell me a little bit about this piece and why you why you singled it out.
I mean, that one is, since No Terrapin Station, right, is, huge album, right? Just a massive Grateful Dead record. And obviously, Dancing the Horror is a big thing. And it's like, it has on that album cover, it has these turtles kind of dancing, playing the guitar on a porch,
Right.
type of thing. And so like, I wanted to have the turtle, dance with the rabbi and had some simcha. And I just thought that was a cool idea and make it. And it turned out, you can't research everything, but I found out the Maryland Terrapins was a big sports team.
Oh, right.
In Maryland. So people were like just out of their mind in Baltimore because the Terrapin or whatever. So even if they didn't know the Grateful Dead reference, they were aware of this reference that I was not aware of that made them like it.
It's especially great because I haven't researched Terrapin Station, but I believe it's founded on the idea that this old ancient myth that the whole universe rests on the back of a terrapin. So I didn't know if there was some spiritual religious dialogue there.
The one thing that since you brought that up, that I am very sensitive to, there are sometimes I'm makel about certain things, meaning that I'm liberal with my self and lenient in creating things, but I try to actually follow the halakha of artwork to make it accessible to everybody, meaning that there's a Haredi family that comes to the museum. They could go look at my artwork and there's nothing in my artwork that makes it not accessible to them. Okay. And that's like a big issue. People don't realize, like they're about to have Art Basel Qatar. And why is that interesting? In Islam, they also have restrictions on imagery, right? Just like ourselves, right? Just like the Jewish people. And so that matters in a lot of ways, because I feel like if you're going to make it Jewish, you also have to work within those guidelines.
So how is that relevant to this particular piece? That
I'm actually visited a bunch of Native American friends of mine in December out in the res, and love the Native Americans, and I'm a big supporter. And many of them are supporters of Israel, and and they've also endured a difficult challenges since European contact, so we've had basically problems with similar people in a way, right? But that's like a very famous Native American folk like mythology, or from their religion, so I don't try to mix up any other religion.
I understand.
Into mine. Some of very close friends are religious Christians, and I respect them, and even though we're very different in the way we view the world, but the real truth is there was a guy who came up with his own ideas, a Jewish guy who came up with his own ideas and said, I'm going to get rid of this, I'm going to get rid of that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And his name was Jesus,
Right.
and he made a new religion.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in everything maintaining its pure core identity.
That's so fascinating, and I get what you're saying. Some people, they would say, "Wait a minute, here's a guy who's fusing Judaism with images of with the thing that says LSD on it, and this." No,
So just to tell you that
I looked at.
I just want
Yeah, go ahead.
you saw the thing with the pot LSD.
Yeah, and it says
where that came from.
you've got you've assigned those acronyms to like Jewish things, but I'm just saying broadly.
Well, actually, I didn't assign it. Where it came from at the yeshiva when I first showed up at the yeshiva 16.5 years ago. It's a very lit-ish black hat, white shirt, place. It's really, it's serious. And basically I had very long hair almost to my knees when I showed up over there. And there was a rabbi who I didn't really know, become friendly with, much older than, he's like in his 80s now. And he had said to me, came up to me one time, and he said to me in the Beit Medrash, in the learning, room, right? He was like, came up to me and whispered in my ear. He said, "Pot LSD," and it kind of hurt my feelings. I kind of look, because you got hair that long and you're at a yeshiva like that. It's and so like when he whispered in my ear, he came up and said, "Pot LSD." I thought he was stereotyping me and kind of like. And like funny with, getting funny with me, whatever. So I said to him, "Excuse me?" And he's repeated it again. And then I said to him, "Why are you saying that to me?" And he said, "You don't know what that is? You don't know what pot and LSD is?" So I told him, "Yeah, of course I know what it is." I said, "But why are you saying this to me?" And then he told me they had gone up to Woodstock. They heard about Woodstock was happening in 1969, and that there was a lot of Jewish people that were going to Woodstock. So he went up there, right? With a sign, made a sign, and stood out on the outside of the entrance of the farm with the sign. Full Haredi guy, black hat, white shirts, he'd the whole long black coat, the whole thing, straight out of Central Casting. And he's got a sign that says pot LSD. And he said, and in small letters, he told me it's for put on to fill and let's start.
Right.
So he went up there to get the hippies.
I love that.
To put on.
So wait, did
this
piece precede that interchange, or after he told you that, then you put?
No, that piece was inspired by that.
Got it. It's so good. Another thing, we're looking at this piece. It's actually very hard to describe, but it's got a psychedelic background. There's a fellow sitting cross-legged holding up a peace sign. It says pot above him and LSD below him with the words that Steve just described. But what struck me is that looks like Reb Zalman, Shechter Shalom.
It's funny you say that, because when you were doing the description, I was going to say, kind of looks like the Reb Zalman from the Naropa Institute.
Was that deliberate?
It's not deliberate, but I think he's a guy who kind of fits that bill a little bit.
Oh yeah,
as
absolutely.
Far as things go, and I'm not necessarily a big Talmud of Reb Zalman, but I'm definitely very aware of his of what he did, but yeah, he's definitely looks like a
that's great.
A Talmud of Reb Zalman for sure.
I got to study with Reb Zalman. I lived in Boulder for several years, and that's where he was in the last phase of his. Well, he was there for many, many years, but anyway, unbelievable teacher
at Naropa.
Well, no, I just knew him. I don't think he was at Naropa when I knew him, but just really a great Jew. He was a wonderful reader of texts and a beautiful explainer of profound concepts. So we've talked about the ways in which your Yiddishkeit informs your work, and and it's quite clear. Anybody looking at Psychedelicatessen, I wonder if your Jewish identity or your Jewish cup has been informed by your work or by the work of these countercultural artists. So has the influence run in the other way? The
influence running the other way.
Like, has it changed as this kind of work? You're an experience where the work changes the way you think about your relationship to to your Judaism or yourself as a...
Everybody in this world should be held accountable and be responsible for what they're engaging in their actions and their pursuits. My job is to reveal Hashem in this world, give chizuk and chinuch to Jewish people, regardless of their level of understanding.
For people who don't know, like encouragement and education. Yeah.
Right. But the other thing is, it's important with my artwork, you don't have to be Jewish to enjoy it. That's also important
Yes.
to say. And that I need to, because I went to public school and a lot of my friends are not Jewish people. It's important to, represent, Jewish people to the non-Jewish world as well. Right. That's also another one of my responsibilities. And so essentially it's to make the artwork available to everybody, to level the playing field, to democratize, culture in that way, to make it available for everybody. Shouldn't be like by us, for us. Right. Jewish artist who's just making artwork and they're Jewish. The other side is there's these incredible Haredi painters that are just classically trained and they're so amazing, but they never lived in the outside world. So they keep creating the same images that we've been painting for 250 years, right?
I see.
Like Tashli down at the river in Seattle, right? Or something.
Yeah.
So it's important to make it accessible to everybody, and also to make people realize, even within, I'm talking about secular people, Jewish, and people that aren't Jewish or whatever. But the other thing that this also does that's very important is it's also, which has happened to me many times, that it's almost like I'm doing kirov to the religious community, because they come in and they say to me, wait a minute, this artist, how does he know this?
Right.
How does he know? Then they meet me and then we start talking and I speak their language. I speak, yeshiva-ish talk or whatever.
Right.
I could get into it with them, and they say, oh my God, I didn't realize. We didn't even know we could come to this museum.
I see.
This is just like the Torah. It's like your inheritance to the Jewish, museum and the Jewish culture. This is just as much yours as it is to the Jewish guy that's just bagels and lox.
Beautiful.
That's it.
That's
You know what I
really
mean?
beautiful.
And so it also needs to pull them closer to the center.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's, it's very important to represent all these things and bring everybody closer and not be involved in.
You beautifully articulated the ways in which your work and our work, one's work in the world, can serve to bring people together and to not marginalize people or push people away.
Right. I do think that the purpose of creativity in artwork, whether that's, culinary arts or music or, visual arts or theater or whatever it may be, right? Whatever kind of thing, people come into the nightclub or the performance space and starts playing the music, or they start doing their thing, making the music. Everybody forgets
Right.
that this one's right, this one's
It's
left,
true.
and this one's this. Everybody starts dancing, and I think that's a very important job as the artist isn't to weaponize artwork to create greater division amongst everybody. It's important to bring everybody closer together.
Beautifully said. I want to wind up with with my last two questions. One is just, what is one thing that you love that you want to share with people? It can be about your work, it can be about somebody else's work, it can be about Torah, anything you just want to turn people on to real quick.
The one thing that I love is, I would say, is time, right? Because it is a finite commodity that we all have, right? Tomorrow's guaranteed to no one. Since I was a little kid, I said, wow, people used to say, you got to sleep 8 hours a night. So I said, wow, 8 hours a night? What are you talking about, 8 hours a night? You got to sleep 8 hours a night. This is what you got to do. I said to myself, I started thinking about that. I said to myself, wow, 8 hours. Wow, what does that mean? If someone lives to be 90, right, and they slept 8 hours a night, they slept for 30 years of their life, right? That's what it means.
Right.
So if I now say I'm going to sleep like just 2 hours less,
Yeah.
3 hours less. Ultimately, what the sum of that total will be 10 years I was awake,
Yeah.
that I could be making
Yeah.
art, I could be doing Torah, I could
I
be
love
meeting
that.
interesting people like yourself.
Right.
And so one of the things I love is time. But what's important about saying that is that the same way everything in this world, you could be using your time for the good,
Mhm.
to be productive, to
Mhm.
do this or that. So one thing that I'm passionate about is my time, and I'm in love with that, and just spending it focusing on my own creation, but with my friends and family and the people I love, and and the friends, the family that I could choose of the people I haven't met. You know what I mean?
I love that answer. Okay. And then the last, thank you for that. And then the very last question is, what is the best Jewish food?
Oh, that's a very that's probably, of all the dozens of interviews I've done related to my Jewish artwork, that could be one of the most challenging questions. Yeah, and really, I'm not even exaggerating. It's
Because
like,
there's so many
and
delicious choices.
there's a lot of delicious choices. I happen to be like a Ashkefardi guy, so I'm mixed. And so, I have a little bit of, I have a taste for both kinds of foods. My wife, Baruch Hashem, she's amazing. It's like anytime somebody says, "Tell me about what something you love or things you love," I always want to say, "I love my wife."
Yeah.
But when you said you
Yeah.
you share, I said I
You
don't
gotta
want to
take that off the
share.
table.
Yeah, I don't want. I don't want. But basically, she's a Litvak, right? She's a Lithuanian, and basically she cooks that like super Ashkenazi food. She has all the recipes from the old country type of thing. Her family has only been here not even for 100 years. They left before the Shoah, before the
Mhm.
Holocaust, and some of them came here. So obviously the ones that came here survived, and ones that didn't.
Yeah.
And but she makes the food, so obviously I love her cooking, and it's Ashkenazi and style. I like the mishmash of the Israeli
Yep.
kind of food, of how that's blended all that stuff together. I happen to have a lot of Moroccan and Iraqi
Oh, so good.
friends, and it's and Temani, love all that food.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say. I like it all. That's tough. But obviously, I'm like, we started at the beginning of the interview. I'm kind of like at the nexus, at the umbilical cord, I believe you said earlier, related to the Lower East Side, this was a real, kish, matzo ball soup,
Yeah. Yep.
knish, pastrami,
Yep.
corned beef, the kosher
All
Chinese
good. Oh,
food kind of
yes.
kind of
Yeah.
neighborhood, herring and all that stuff, which I'm gonna be a big fan of herring.
There it
But
is. Let's go with
I
herring.
can't say it's the best.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah,
It's
herring.
like,
I love herring and sour cream. Absolutely. Steve Marcus,
yeah.
this has been a total joy. So I thank you so much for your time and for the energy and the work that you're putting into the world. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I look forward to I thought an hour was going to be so long. It actually went so quick.
Yeah.
Maybe we could continue down the road another time.
I would
there's always
I would love
more
to.
to talk about.
I would love to.
All right, cool.
All right. Be well.
All right, excellent.